Hello, Eastern Ace. It's Phil and Wilkerson back with another episode of Eastern Ace Conversations with Phil and Whit. Unfortunately, Whit will not be joining us today, but she is here in spirit, and I'm gonna try to channel my finer woman or ladies, Zeta Phi Beta, and her like she's with me, and make sure I ask questions that she would want me to ask. So Whit, hopefully I do not disappoint you. Before we get started with this wonderful conversation, I wanted to just share some announcements. As you know, I don't know if you can see that, everyone. We do have an Eastern ACE webinar, Lunch and Learn, doctoral or not. Actually, our guest today is going to be one of the panelists. So make sure to check out, register. That's November 29th. I'm actually going to register for this as I'm in a doctoral program myself. And so this will be a great discussion. Next, as you know, just want to reiterate that we are finally on for a conference. We have a conference next year. It's going to be in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. And so we're excited for that and some programming as it relates to that. And then just want to give you just a preview of some of our upcoming guests for the rest of this season. So obviously, kind of spoiler alert, our guest today, Jennifer Rossi Long. We're going to have Samara Reynolds, Jill Milan, Teresa Farewell, Tibisai Hernandez, Jermaine Harris, and Natalie. They're going to be joining us later this year. So we have some great conversations lined up. And let me see. And go back. All right. I'm trying to navigate these things. But without further ado, I want to bring on the stage or the virtual stage someone that I hold in high regard, my unofficial mentor. I think she knows I called her that or attached myself to her. She brought me into Eastern ACE. I don't know why. She called me and asked me to join and get involved. Maybe she saw something in me. Maybe she saw leadership in me. So maybe that's why we're going to talk about leadership with this person. But without further ado, I want to bring someone I look up to, Eastern ACE stellar rock star, Jen Rossi Long. I put the whole thing Jennifer, but Jen Rossi Long. Welcome to Eastern ACE Conversations.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind words.
Well, I don't know. We've already been on this show, so I don't want to make you do all that whole reiteration. But I do want to do a little bit of your leadership journey because this is going to be what the topic is. Leaders develop leaders. So maybe before we can get into that topic of leadership, why don't you share with us your leadership journey?
Sure. And actually, this is so funny because this is something, you ever have those like memories that you forget about for years and years, and then all of a sudden they come back into like your conscious and you're kind of like, where did that come from? And you reflect, right? So I would love to start with that, which actually takes me back to 8th grade. But this was something it came back into my consciousness about like a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, whoa, that's a throwback. But I, in reflecting about it, I was like, wow, this was a meaningful part of my leadership journey. And I had no idea. And it's going to seem completely unrelated, so bear with me. But I was in 8th grade. And I was as self-absorbed as most teenagers are at that time, right? But I had my group of friends, and one of my friends happened to have a crush on this boy. Okay, so right. In what I will only describe as the most middle school way I could have done this, I ended up getting them together. It involved call waiting and people on multiple lines and this whole thing. But anyway, they became a couple at the time. And I remember like thinking to myself, like I'm unattached at this moment in time. I don't have a boyfriend. Maybe I should have been helping myself. But I had so much joy in seeing my friend happy. Now, they probably broke up like 3 weeks later, right? I don't remember the details. They are not still together, 30 years later or whatever.
They got married. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, no. This is not like a long love story. But it's the earliest moment that I can remember somebody else's joy bringing me joy, like in a very real way. And I say that because I feel like that theme started carrying out for me through my leadership journey, but I really didn't recognize that until recently. So that's why when I was on the volleyball team in high school, I ended up becoming captain, not
Mhm.
because I was the best player on the team, but because I was one that wanted to encourage other people on the team or wanted to lift somebody up if they had a bad game or celebrate them if they had a good game, even if I had a terrible game. Like I realized like, wow, there's all of these other sources of joy rather than just me winning all the time. Right. Um, and then moving into college, I was a university ambassador. Some folks might have seen me in my university ambassador polo for Halloween this year. So that those were the tour guides on campus. I gave tours on campus, and I ended up on the leadership team in my junior and senior year for similar reasons. Right? I liked when other people were successful, and I liked having a part in that or being like an encouraging person. And fast forward through my career in higher education now, that theme is still playing out for me. And I'll just add to that, because this is proof that like I didn't talk to anyone about this until now, right? I'm an introvert, so all of this reflection's been happening in my head. But literally a week ago on Instagram, right? They're in my head. I see this post about this word. I think it's pronounced like gunnen. It's Dutch. And it literally, the definition is that you find happiness in someone else's happiness, or you witness someone else's success without grudge or judgment.
Oh yeah, I've heard of
That
that one
is
before.
beautiful, right? Beautiful.
I think honestly, that's in regards to leadership. I think I really do get a joy when other people shine too. I think a lot of people think that because I'm extroverted, they think I like all the attention, which I would say I do like attention. That's why I'm hosting a show, whatever. But
Own it.
at the same time, I do get a lot of joy of putting attention on people that don't necessarily like that. So let me think of an example for you. It's like recognizing and uplifting one of my quieter friends, Dorothy Hayden, which you know.
Yeah.
Dorothy Hayden is someone I'll sing her praises every form I can. I get so much joy from seeing her be celebrated because I'm the loud one. So I do feel that. But one of my questions is, okay, I see the crush on the boyfriend, and I see, you can be the connector of people behind the scenes, but you got leadership roles like being the captain of the volleyball team. What was the things that separate from that skill of connecting people, but actually maybe taking charge or like you could have been a very contributing player to the volleyball team? What separated from you just being a contributor to a leader in those spaces?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like other than that kind of like connector or encourager,
Yes.
in thinking back, I would have to say a little bit of optimism and belief. So, I'm a big Ted Lasso fan for a reason, but I think that sometimes like now some of the things I'm talking about across campus that we're trying to do as a career development center mirror some of the things that I talked about when I was playing volleyball. Like I tend to feel good about the future, and I think for whatever reason, I make other people feel good about the future. So I guess, I don't know, maybe that's just inherent to who I am, but I think that that's part of what led to those leadership roles, because I believed when I was on that volleyball team or the traveling team that we were going to win the tournament, even if there was no way we were going to win the tournament. Like I had that mindset, and people believed in that and liked to kind of rally around that kind of thing. So I don't know. And I think part of it's initiative too.
Yes.
So again, going back to those early leadership days, like in volleyball, I would go to all these other folks in high school and say, "Oh, you're on the swim team? I'll come see your swim meet if you bring some of the swimmers to come to the volleyball game, or I'll go to your cross country meet if you come bring some of the runners to the volleyball game." Right? So like really kind of like getting out there and getting us all to like enjoy the other things that we were doing. And leading through to present day in my work, I've done a lot of that, particularly while I was at St. Joe's. There wasn't a great connection between the federal government agencies in the Philly area and some of the schools. So I brought the two together, and we had a yearly meeting. So just kind of doing things like that. To me, it brings me joy because I'm constantly like creating or trying to do something different or trying to solve a problem. But I would like to think that that initiative maybe plays a part in it too.
And also, one of the things, we say that introvert, extrovert is just basically where you draw energy.
Mm-hmm.
But from what I'm hearing from you, that you do put on some, not a front, but you put on an armor, and you're doing very extroverted things
Mm-hmm.
when you're in your leadership role. Can you talk about having to, maybe if you're more reserved, put on, it's not like fake it till you make it, but believe it and achieve it. Like in my leadership, I'm way more organized, but in my personal life, you look at my drawer, it's messy, right? Like how like a leadership is a different transformation. Can you talk about that? The dichotomy of that?
Yeah, it is a balance because you're right. A lot of the stuff I'm describing is like very extroverted, right? And I am an introvert, but I think that's because I can go and I can do those things, but I can balance that on the other end with really reflecting about the experiences. So really thinking about, whether I'm in a meeting and I'm like, I'm really annoyed by this or that. So, okay, why am I annoyed? Why did that bother me so much? Right. Or, okay, I feel like people were really into that idea that we put out there. Why though? Like what made them like buy into that? So I feel like balancing it with that sort of like introverted time and kind of reflecting on the experiences that I'm having as a leader and just as a person kind of help give me energy for those more extroverted, like, okay, this is potentially a good idea. It needs to come out of my mouth instead of staying up in my brain.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I think about that same mindset of maybe the opposite. Like when I try to say, okay, if I want to be a leader, I have to be more organized, and so I do have to like start equipping myself with my tools that are not in my normal life,
Mm-hmm.
but then still rely on the things that are in my normal life, like do rely on my strengths of communication and all that. So it's kind of weird to do that. So one of the things I'm thinking about, and as we're going to the real meat of this, is that you are definitely a connector, and I would say that in a sense that you're also really really good at uplifting others, personal experience. And so, where did this mindset come of leading and developing other leaders? Maybe you can go back to those high school, like where you were like maybe as a student ambassador, you were training other people. But where did this mindset of, if I'm going to lead, but I want to make sure that other people feel like they could be leaders too, where did that come from?
Well, first of all, I just want to point out you won't be able to see the full thing, but right behind me, that's my Phil award right there.
Yeah.
Investing in others. So I want you to know it is there. It has a good like prominent place right behind me there. But I think that it's like part moral and part logical for me, if this makes sense. So like the moral for me is, well, everybody deserves that. Doesn't everybody deserve to grow, to advance, to have the support in doing so? Like that's a value of mine. I believe very strongly in that. And I appreciate the people that have seen that in me. And I know how that felt to be on the receiving end of that. So the least I can do is try to be that for other people. But then on the logical side, I'm like, this is that rare like win-win-win situation. Like you invest in other people, you're making them feel good. So that's a win. You're investing in organizational sustainability, whether it's a volunteer organization or a company or an institute of higher ed. So that's a win. And again, it feels personally good for me. So that there's that third win. So there's not a whole lot of reason for me not to do it because of kind of values, but also kind of like that logical, well, this is a win for everyone. Why not invest my time here?
Yeah, like transition plan. Like I can't do this forever. Maybe make sure that the next person does it better, does it better. Why do you think sometimes people are threatened by leadership programs? Or what do you think are the challenges I'm thinking of like threat, like I don't want to develop other leaders because then they're going to take my job or something like that. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like there's always like a scarcity mindset of, I got to make sure I develop myself and not let someone get past me. And I'm just thinking about that in a scarcity. But do you think there's some other challenges in development of leadership?
I mean, when I hear that, I think of, either someone having the mindset of like it's a zero-sum game. So either they're a leader or I'm a leader, rather than we can both actually be leaders. Like it can be like this and like you and me and that person versus it's you or me or that person, because that just keeps people in conflict and it's not productive, right? But I also, and I don't mean to sound like diminishing to folks who maybe have like struggled with this mindset, but I think that it could be based on like past trauma they've had on a job or experiences that they've had, but perhaps it could be just lack of trust in those around them, or their own level of confidence. Like, I'm not really sure that I belong here, but I don't want that person coming in because they're probably better than me. And I don't, right? Like,
Yes.
those are all really, really damaging thoughts that can like run a loop, especially if you've been in a situation where maybe you did work in an environment where it was more cutthroat or whatever the case might be. But to me, like, I think those are some of the things that sometimes get in the way.
Yeah, and I think that's challenging because I think that, sometimes there's this mindset of hold on. But like what I found is the best mentors and best leaders are people that like eventually want you to be like, I want you to do better than me. And they raise you up and they encourage you. And then eventually you might not even be better than them, but you have that same mindset. What you're going to do is you're going to raise someone else up. So it becomes a train or a thing. So when you saw, let's just go back to you're a president, you've done Eastern ACE, you've been on other episodes. Tell us what really sparked your, like the brainchild of this leadership empowerment series. What sparked this idea of incubating leadership within Eastern ACE?
Yeah. So I think this is my favorite thing that I got to do over my like 3-year term as like incoming president and past president, was building the leadership empowerment series in partnership with some other folks and that board shadow program.
Yes.
So honestly, I'm going to give you some credit here where credit's due. It started with the concept of the board shadow program, recognizing that folks weren't sitting at the table and couldn't really imagine what the board was like. So how could we expect them to run for the board? That's when I just started cracking the door open to this whole like leadership idea within the association. And I don't remember what we were texting about, something random. And then I must have mentioned to you that I was trying to do this board associate position or something like that. And you literally texted me back something like, I think sometimes people overcomplicate it when really you can just do it. And I was like, oh my God, yeah. Like, and after that, I was like, okay, how have I been complicating this? Oh, I'm trying to make it into a whole year-long thing, and it's going to require HQ time. And really all it needs to be is someone can sign up and shadow a board meeting, right? Like, so really you were the the person who kind of pushed me to be like, yeah, I'm making this super complicated and it really doesn't have to be. And then once that was taking off, we looked around and said, okay, based on the new strategic plan for the organization, we know we want to invest in our members as leaders. What are some of the different ways that we could do that? And I was thinking about all the past presidents of Eastern ACE that we had access to who wanted to be helpful, and how do we connect them back with the organization so they feel like they have a place here? So I guess again, that connection piece comes in. And I know there's other programs out there that focus on like management and other things, but we really wanted to get to like the heart and soul of leadership. And so, in collaboration with a ton of folks, I'm afraid I'm going to leave someone out, but folks on the professional development side, other folks that were on the board, folks at the committee level, we got together and we were like, okay, how do we make this happen? And we started with a panel of folks talking about their leadership style. And then we progressed into the half day, like digging into 3 different topics. And then of course, Jill like took it to the next level last year. And we even had some opportunities to engage in some of that leadership programming at the conference, which was awesome.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, I do remember that text because I was like, I just want to sit and see what it looks like. I don't even talk. And I remember that, and the reason that was sparked for me, because I don't remember, I think I told you, it was like, I remember when I was in grad school, I just reached out to a Black male dean And he said, just come to my office for the day. And I said, okay. And it was very simple. I just walked around with him all day. That's it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's it. Shout out to Jarvis Campbell, who became my frat brother eventually. So I think sometimes you're right. Like we oversimplify it. But for me, the impact of the board shadow program, and I'll say this in mine, was that when I was able to, even as a quiet observer, understand that that space that I was in was very similar to spaces I've already been in, like meeting, I've done meeting minutes before with my frat, with my fraternity. I do know Robert's Rule of Order and other things. And so it lowered the veil. And that was, I think this is my first board position, but I wouldn't have thought that was what the board was like, because I did not equate this board to being similar to other situations that I've been before, because I didn't get to see it. So maybe talk about the importance when we talk about developing leaders beyond the shadowing program. What is the importance of allowing people to see what it's like as a leader before they're leaders? And what myths do you think people have before they see it? Because I'll tell you my myth was that you had to be to be on the board for Eastern EACE, you had to be a director of a career center. I don't know why. I just thought you had to have a certain title. Everyone there in the board, they were all directors or something. And so I think that's beyond my lane. What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, another myth that I hear all the time, because part of the, as you'll probably remember, part of the board shadow program was that I then, if folks wanted to do a follow-up, 30-minute sort of mentoring call about what they're thinking about next with Eastern EACE, I made myself available for that. So within that, time and time again, I got the question, well, what role should I have first if I want to become this position on the board, whether that was president or something else? And I'm not one that really believes in this is the only path to the board. So I do see that as a myth. Some folks might disagree. That's okay. But I feel like if the person's coming with the skill set and kind of the understanding of not looking at the association narrowly through one functional area, but being able to kind of broaden that scope, and contribute to a strategic plan, then okay, maybe you've been on 5 boards, maybe you haven't been on any at all, but what are the experiences that you can bring to it? So that's definitely a myth that I feel like has come up time and again. Or I've only been in the association for 3 years, so I don't know. Well, I don't know. What have you done in those 3 years? What experiences are you bringing outside of Eastern EACE that you could bring in? Because if we only have people sitting on the board that have been in the association for 20 years, then we're missing a voice. Right there, there's a critical voice that we're missing there. So I think that's why it's important. And in terms of folks having just sort of the visibility into what it is and how it looks, I just, I'll give you an example from my own life. I always kind of felt like director was kind of my final stop, director of a career center, because that's mostly what I saw on campuses. I saw a lot of folks that were close to retirement, and that was the point they were at in their career. And I was like, okay, this is what people do. This makes sense. And then I became a director and I got exposed to some different things. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not sure what that next step's going to be, but I think there might be a next step here. And because I've been fortunate that, Westchester's given me an opportunity to sit around tables that I haven't been sitting around before, and to be in those rooms, I see it and I hear the conversations they're having. And I'm like, I could totally do that. Okay. This isn't the scary or unobtainable thing that I thought it was. Yeah. And then you think to yourself, well, how silly that I thought that, but it's not silly. I think it's just human nature. I don't know.
No, I don't think it's silly at all, man. I think that, I still think of the Wizard of Oz and the big scary voice. And then you see the guy behind doing all that crazy stuff. And you're like, oh,
it's such a good,
yeah, that's my thing. But I think, honestly, I don't know if that ever goes away, because I've now been in conversations, and even hearing of other conversations and higher up, it's still scary. I'll share one example is that in the past 6 months, because of my Toastmasters, I've connected with at least 3 past presidents of Alpha, my fraternity, had their numbers and texted them like normal people. And I
They are
was like,
normal people.
yes, I'm saying, but for the longest time, I was like, they ran a national organization.
I hear you.
They're calling me Brother Wilkerson and then sending me funny memes and being normal. And it trips my mind. But even now, I'm still like, there's still levels. There's still levels.
Yeah.
So do you ever feel that? Do you ever, like you said, you got a peak of it. Do you still feel, even as you develop leaders and you're a director and you have that word director, do you still feel like there's levels and you feel it when you're in those spaces?
I do, but I'm not afraid to go into those spaces anymore. But I can't say that's not there at all. Yeah, that's a process, but it's not something that I'm like, I saw it and you know what? I was absolutely right. That is the scariest thing in the world. Like, I'm fortunate. That's not really what I saw. I saw it and I said, okay, all right, I could do that. And I think as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that I don't have to contribute in the way that somebody else contributes. I can bring my own strengths to the table. That's one that took me a lot to develop in terms of confidence and just being confident of like, these are my strengths and I know that they're my strengths. And so this is what I can bring to the table. So if that leader is showing up and speaking in a different way or presenting in a different way or bringing different ideas to the table, that doesn't mean that my ideas are bad. We're just approaching it from a different way. But that has taken a lot of trying to get there, for sure.
How about this? What did you said you gave some techniques. I'll share one thing. Like when I am in those rooms, of higher status, I turn down my mouth and turn up my ears, and more like I'm gonna just be super observant and not take up space and learn and then ask questions to my neighbor. Like when I'm in scary meetings, I'll just talk to the person next to me, like, what does that mean? What does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, so you don't feel like you're embarrassing yourself in front of people. What is a technique you would think you would implement to a merging leader as they're going to higher elevation of leadership? What would you suggest they do?
What would I suggest? Like specifically going into a meeting?
Yeah, maybe. Okay, how about that? Like, let's go back to the leadership journey. How about what would you say to that young person, or not young, that emerging leader going into physical spaces that are higher than their normal space?
Gotcha.
Like that meeting I told you about when I talked to the person next to me.
Totally. Yeah. A couple things. One thing that I do is after I'm in those spaces, I'm typically in them with my vice president or at least somebody else that I can trust and I can go to say, how do you think that went? Or like download that with me for a little bit, right? So being able to ask someone, even if they're not like a formal mentor, but to kind of like engage in that little mentoring activity with you, that's always helpful to me. Or if I have to present in those spaces saying, hey, give me some feedback on that. That I found to be incredibly helpful. Of course, that requires being open to whatever the person gives you, right? You need to be open to that feedback. The other thing is, I think folks have to decide what the thing is for them. So another Ted Lasso reference, if it's Rebecca making herself big, if it's somebody doing like meditation before they go into that space. For me, like I put on my jams. Like I have like a Beyonce playlist that's like high energy. Like I look at her as like a very powerful woman. So I feel like I'll listen to that in the car on the way in if I know how I have one of those big meetings, or I pop like my earbuds in walking across campus to the meeting. And there's just something about like the energy in some of those songs on that playlist that I'm just like, oh, I've got this. So as cheesy as it might sound, that like legitimately, those are two strategies that I've found helpful.
I ain't gonna lie, that's not cheesy at all, because I do the same thing. I mean,
oh, good. Okay.
I turn up before I go into things too. And
Yeah.
also I talk to myself and I say things like, I mean, this does sound really affirmation-y. I belong here. And who are they? I do a little bit of opposite, though. Like,
I love that.
Like, who are they to judge me? I'm me. Like, like act like I'm tough. And then I go in there and maybe overcompensate. But there's been a great conversation. We might run over a little bit. I just want to give you some final thoughts, final words. Is there anything that I didn't ask you or anything that you'd like to share with those that are going to watch us or listen to this later?
I would just say to believe in yourself, because you are worthy of advancing and being in a leadership role. But not just believe in yourself, invest in yourself. So asking for that feedback, asking for help along the way, really reflecting on whatever feelings are coming up along your leadership journey. And if I can be supportive of that, please feel free to reach out, because I'm happy to be.
Well, excellent. Well, this has been an excellent conversation. Thank you so much, Jen, for joining. I'm going to take you off the screen real quick. And so thank you, Jen, for joining. Just one quick announcement. We are going to be trying to upload these conversations to Spotify. So take a look. We're going to work on that. So be on the lookout for that for those that are audio processors and like to listen to shows rather than just watch. Additionally, please make note of all the previous announcements, the conference, the webinars, all the things and the like. Please continue to engage with this content afterwards. This is still a great conversation. So please leave comments in the video so that Eastern EACE can respond to, or connect with Jen or myself or Whitney later on. But thank you so much for listening, and we're out.